Hey.
Okay, yep, it says live. I think we're on. Okay, so I'm still going to go through the agenda on this particular one. Uh, for this week or for this month. So I sent out the agenda a little bit ago. I'll share my screen and let's just go through the first ones in order. Try and get through them
Okay.
quick here. Screen share, entire screen. Okay. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Right, so the first one was Scala I/O target. Nothing's changed on this one, so I'm going to suggest we put a hibernate on it for now. I'm not sure whether this is actually going to go anywhere further anyway, because I think it's been replaced or deprecated by the larger I/O questions, the larger I/O library. But if anybody has any objections, speak out now. Otherwise, I'm just going to stick a hibernating on this one.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, that's done. All right. Nice and quick. Next one is unsigned integer data types. So this is from Sebastian. So Sebastian, why don't you talk us through this one? This is exciting.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'll bring it up here on the view.
Yeah.
There we go.
So the general idea is to introduce 4 new data types that represent the unsigned integers corresponding to the signed integers. And the first motivation for that was that in Scala.js, there is currently no way you can represent and type a value which is an unsigned integer from JavaScript's point of view.
Right.
And that causes some things that are really not nice. For example, this facade type for uint32 array, which basically works with doubles, because that's the only thing you can do.
Okay.
And so for Scala.js, I will basically need eventually have those 4 data types. And
okay.
I figured, well, in fact, they could also be useful and they would also make sense on the JVM and also maybe on LLVM if that happens for real. So might as well make a SIP out of that. And that's how this came to life, basically.
Cool. Yeah, I read that you said there would at least need to be a minor change. I would have thought this would have been a pretty major change to, well, I suppose it's all relative, but what percentage of this needs to actually be implemented in the Scala language and the Scala compiler versus a library?
Yeah, so that depends very much on what approach we take. So we identified that we could take 2 very different approaches. One which we've implemented so far is the don't touch the compiler as much as possible approach, in which we basically just have to tweak like 1 line of code to prevent the optimization of equality to bypass the boxes runtime implementation.
Got it.
So we just changed that line. Otherwise, everything else is library. But it includes changes in boxes runtime, which is arguably very close to the compiler, even though it's library based. So that's one approach. One of the drawbacks so far is we've not quite completely managed to get exactly the same performance as before for equality. When no unsigned integers are used, which is not really good. So we're still trying to figure out how we can do that, but it will probably involve having at least to also hijack the boxed versions of the unsigned integers so that they extend to have a long number, Scala number. The problem is that scalar number is a class, and any vals, of course, cannot extend classes. But so that's why we have to mangle with boxes runtime. But another approach might be to hijack the classes in the backend to make them extend a scalar number anyway, and then we don't have to mess with boxes runtime. But it means a little bit more of compiler magic. But that would likely give exactly the same performance as before.
Cool.
Can you quantify how much slower quality gets?
We've not explored all the solutions we've imagined to make it faster, but so far it's pretty bad. It's 3 times slower when you compare non-number classes. So let's say you have a class foo and its equals methods, and if you compare a foo to a foo with equal, that comparison is 3 times slower than before.
That's a showstopper, yeah.
So right now but that's so far it's the dumbest implementation we've implemented. We have a few ideas to make it faster while still only touching the library, but we've not implemented them yet, so we don't really know yet how that's going to perform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one is really important.
Yeah, I know. The implementation is not viable.
Yeah.
For that reason. But yeah.
I see all the. You've got a lot of benchmark data at the bottom. This is a really well-written SIP, by the way, Sebastian.
We took quite some time to write it.
I can tell. So I think probably it seems sensible to put this into public review for a month, right?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. I don't think there's any reason you shouldn't keep working on it in the meantime. It looks like you've done a lot of due diligence on this already. But I think this meeting will hopefully publicize it, and then we'll put it into a month's public review and let people comment on any concerns and things that they've got over it and any suggestions. So that seems good. Do we have a public review? I have a feeling we don't have a public review label yet, which I'll rectify right now if we don't. So, might be a second. So that's a pull request on here, right? So I'll do this offline. It'll take too long now, but yeah, that seems great. Any other comments on this one before we move on to the next item?
Not for me.
Nope. Okay. So the next one is implicits in fours, which SOM/SNP has actually got an implementation for now. So there's been some activity. I took this off of the hibernating list since it's revived again. I think the question to ask here is, what do we do next? We're sort of in uncharted territory for this stuff now. We have an implementation that people can try out.
Oh, Seth, you're muted, I think.
Let me summarize the current situation. So,
okay.
SOM has code that looks like it works. I don't know. I don't think anyone's really looked at it hard, but it looks like it does what the goal is, which is supporting implicits in 4. So I think the big question on this is whether that's good enough or whether this should only happen in the context of supporting the implicit keyword on patterns in general. So, for example, in a for comprehension with SOM's change, I can now write implicit, A comma B as a tuple, and that will bind A and B as implicit vals in the context of for. It seems logical that you would, if that's supported in for, that you would also be able to write just in regular Scala code implicit val tuple A comma B and have that work too. SOM's code doesn't do that. So so that's the question. Like, should this go forward unless it is made more general?
And I can see you've got a comment in here saying, I'll bring it up at the next SIP/SLIP meeting, and let's make sure the 2015 Martin still feels the way the 2009 Martin did. In 2015, we have Dotty to think about also. That could be a factor. So, Martin, how do you feel about this one?
So I think, it would absolutely have to be extended to general patterns. Otherwise, it's just essentially another special corner case, and we don't want those. I haven't yet. So I guess if we have a thing with patterns, then it would be kind of logical to also extend that to for expressions and natural. So yeah, I would encourage that work is done.
Okay, so SLIP committee thinks should move forward. How though? How do we get this? How do we get this out for people to try out now?
I mean, SOM's code is available for people to try out. I don't know if this is widely known, but the Scala Jenkins infrastructure builds artifacts builds jars for every pull request. So if someone wanted to try it out, they would just have to add a resolver to SPT, telling it to look for this Scala snapshots, and then put in the right version number identifying the PR. There's some instructions on that in the Scala UDI.
So instructions will be posted below. Because that'll take too long to dig in now.
Well, no, I guess I'll see that in my GitHub notifications, and I can follow up on that.
Right, that sounds good.
I don't know what the likelihood is of SOM taking the rest of this on. It might be that the for comprehension only version was sort of all he has time for. I'm not sure, so we'll have to ask him about that. If he doesn't want to do it, then I guess it would go on either the community or the Scala team, and then we'd have to if no one else in the community wants to do it, then it would just become a question of priority.
Okay, so I've put a ping to Som in there to ask him if he has time to continue doing this. So I guess that's where we'll leave it, and he can come back and comment on it. Okay. Good. Oh, that's exciting. Actual implementations showing up now. That's great. So another one that has an implementation now, and I think possibly a bit more controversial, is because
wait, I just have thought of one thing, which is a possible big problem. So I think in Dotty we wanted to enforce that every implicit has an explicitly given type, because it's very confusing that implicits get lost because of essentially the order of local type inference. Right now we don't enforce that, so you can write implicit val equals blah, and then the problem is, did the type checker actually see the implicit val before you used it or not? And depending on that, you have it or you don't have it. So that's of course a big puzzler, and so we wanted to get around that by enforcing that implicit vals always need to carry without types, and the same thing for defs. So that I just wonder how that would work with the changes we're about to do. Because in the force, I think the natural thing is it would not have a result type. Or would we have then to enforce that also? I'm not sure.
Well, in the force, they basically become parameters of lambdas, so their types is inferred before.
Okay, yeah.
So
and in the patterns, there we would have to enforce a result type.
Right,
okay.
but
Well, I'll put this in as a question for now. I'll just leave it open.
Okay.
Does anybody want to get tagged with this to own this question or not? I'll just leave it like that.
Okay.
You guys can see it. You guys can all see it. Okay, that's good. All right. Next one is implicit bias of either. So I think where we left this before, I want to say, was that people generally didn't want this, but somebody's S. Waldman has gone ahead and provided an actual proposal for it. And I don't. Yeah,
I think we would need to consider that sort of wait. There's this other slip going on possibly doing something else with either a validation, and I think that this slip should just be considered in that context, like that group, which hasn't actually done anything lately, but that group should consider both.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. So I'll put in S. Waldman, please coordinate with, and I'll need to find that other slip. Anybody got any other comments on this while I do this? What do you guys feel about this? I kind of like the idea of having an easy way to get a right biased either, as long as it's done right.
I think it's reasonable. I have one thing which I think is not a good idea. It's the shortcut to receive an easy right bias that actually throws on filter when the filter is false. I think that's not a good idea. The argument that is given is that, I mean, I should probably post that as a comment, but I just read that a couple of minutes before the meeting. That the argument that is given in the slip is most of the time you don't actually use filter, you use the other stuff, so it's fine. But then I would suggest that filter would take, instead of having a throwing thing, require that filter takes an additional implicit parameter that specifies what kind of stuff it's supposed to return as an empty. And then that means if you don't use filter, you don't need to do anything. But if you do use filter, you have a compile time error if you don't provide some good implicit for empty.
Right. Okay. The one thing that I caught on when I read through this proposal is that I think if you specify the bias but don't specify a default value, a default fallback value, you get an exception. I didn't like that. I'd rather have it that you have to specify. I personally, I think, would rather have it that you have to specify a default value for it. But at least he seems to have done his homework on this. So I think people should go and read this, if only to set the background for a debate, hopefully a professional and kind debate on the merits of this one. That would be good.
Yeah, this looks much improved from the previous version.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I've asked him to coordinate with the others. There's not much activity on the collections overhaul this month, so I think unless anybody's got any updates on that one, we'll just hold that over to the next meeting.
Yeah, I have to sort through the things to see what kind of things were submitted. I haven't done that yet.
Okay, that's fine. It's still active though, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I just haven't, to come back to the implicit parents thing, I just checked it out. It actually works already in Dotty, so I'm all for it.
Cool. Okay. Pars, again, no updates here, I don't think. Didn't check this morning. No, the last activity is 20 days ago. I don't know if we want to stick this as hibernated for now. Anybody got any updates or status on this one? This is the replacement of the parser combinators with fast parse.
Yeah. So how you didn't follow up with that, or nobody else either?
No, not since not since about 27 days ago. That was the last activity.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, my impression impression from Howie is that he might be interested in seeing it become a standard module, but that he wasn't like volunteering to really step forward to push it through. And I think, I don't know if there's anyone else who would wants to do that. I mean, it's like in theory I would like to. I just don't know if I have time.
Yeah, and it takes somebody to do that. Otherwise, we can't move forward. That's clear.
There we go. I'll just put out a general call for help. Okay, fair enough. All right. The views proposal, Josh is out for very good reasons today. I think really this depends on him giving us an update, so probably hold that over to the next month, unless anybody has anything else on the views. To some degree, this is tied up with the collections overhaul.
Indeed, it is. Yeah.
And I think it still has to be resolved whether this is worth doing separately anyway, and in the meantime, or whether it gets rolled into a much larger change.
Right.
So, okay, hold that. That's a discussion we can hold over for next time. Things have quieted with the I/O discussion. I don't think anything has happened on this one in a few weeks either. But I didn't, I'm sorry to say, still finish the blog post. I'm close to it on where expert groups sit, which I'll send around for review in the whole thing. And that's obviously generated quite a lot of discussion to begin with. So the last change was just a +1 to everything, Dedetrick said, which is, yeah. I don't think this needs to be hibernated yet, but we'll try and see if we can stir up some more information or more updates on it for next time. Okay, so one of the first controversial ones, establishing a fair survey mechanism for slips. This was really brought about by the fact that we had a slip discussion that got very off topic and generated about 300 comments. And after reading through it several times, I personally could draw no serious summary or outcome from the thing on whether we should or should not do this. So we're getting into an area where there'll be a lot of discussion. However, the one thing that's come out of this is nobody seems to really be in favor of a survey mechanism that's too simplistic. So the question of what to do is still out there, but I'm going to suggest we close this one as nobody seems to be in favor of it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think it was good to propose it because that was sort of, it's sort of the default thing you can do. But yeah, I think that's right.
Seems clear. Yeah, I think that was the right way to go.
I mean,
seems clear.
I think
go ahead.
It sort of comes back to the question generally what to do with the Scala library and Scala platform and things like that. But I mean, generally, or if I look at what, let's say, Haskell does and what most open source projects seem to do is that the committers to the project, they vote. And I think that's fair. So in Haskell, the Haskell platform, if something new is proposed for the Haskell platform, then essentially everybody who has a module in the Haskell platform can vote. And that seems to be something that could work, but first we have to get sort of a committer circle to whatever, something.
Voting circle based around module, possibly in time, voting circle based around module contributions to the core.
I mean, generally you can have a more restricted model where you say you have some core committers in quotes who sort of decide what goes in there, and they are sort of the power brokers for this thing. Or you can have a more open model where you say, well, essentially everybody who contributes to that platform or that system has a vote, and that seems to be what the Haskell people do. And I think there are arguments for either one, but I don't see it reasonable to say let everybody vote whether they're committers or not, because I mean, right. What would that be then?
Okay, yeah, no, I think resoundingly that one was viewed as not being the correct solution, which is good. That's the conclusion that should have been reached by it. So I'm closing this one out with a comment to that effect, and that when that is considered, just create a new issue for it to track that one through. Okay, so that's done. There were a couple of extra ones before we hit the big ones. The either invalidation. I'm going to ask Seth and or Eric if there's been any change on this one. I've got a feeling that there hasn't yet on this one, right?
Yeah, no, nothing that I know about.
Okay.
And in fact, at least some of the work, like I know Rex is supposed to provide some implementations that he wrote that I don't think he's provided yet. So I mean, yeah, my sense is that people are supposed to be doing research and no one's really done the research.
Hey, people get busy. I know how that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but I would say don't hibernate it because I actually really intend to do my part of it.
Okay, so no hibernating. I see that the hibernate has become a threat. It's not meant to be. It's just meant to be there's nothing been happening on this. The hibernate will be removed as soon as it is. But I guess it's.
Yeah, either way.
It's no, that's fine. It's stirring it up. If it keeps things moving, then that's good. Okay, two more that aren't actually tracked in the issues right now, but I came across in my email. The first one is, and I think Seth, we're going to rely on you for this one, is a supporting n-array auto-currying n-arity functions.
Yeah, that's not yet a SIP, I guess. That's sort of a pre-proposal.
Okay. Should we have an issue to track this, though?
I'll come up with one if we decide it's a good idea. I think.
Okay.
I think we can drop it for now.
All right. Sounds good. So that's that one, and then a named. This is a SIP proposal for named type arguments and partial type argument lists. So this is actually being able to name the types. I don't know much about this one. I didn't get a chance to properly read it. Did anyone?
That was a while ago, no?
Yeah, I just sort of missed it when it
September 1st. Yeah, I think.
And then I didn't have a chance to read it this morning either, so I could certainly read it for next time.
I think this one unfortunately slipped in under the radar, didn't get noticed, so apologies for that. We caught it eventually. I guess throw this one out in public review again for people to comment on.
Well, this one looks like, I don't know, does it have an implementation?
No, there's no...
No implementation, yeah.
It's just a...
Process-wise, I don't think it would go out for public review until...
Yeah.
Until
okay.
we've read it and decide to either encourage it or not, right?
Okay, so homework for this for the next one then is to take a look at this one, and
also maybe you could the author could fix the formatting. Because
I was just going to say that there's obviously some formatting issues in there. Yeah. So I'll put that on there. Please fix formatting. I'm assuming that is actually. It's not something that would work on the Scala Lang site and just doesn't work in GitHub markup.
Mm.
Is that Heather? Do you know? You're more familiar with the markup on.
No, I don't know what this person was using or thinking that they were using. It's not anything to do with the website or GitHub markup.
It's Jekyll markup, so it will work on Scala.org.
Okay, so
we don't have Jekyll doesn't highlight things on Scalalang.org. It's Google's Prettify. It's a JavaScript.
Oh right, fair enough. So please fix the formatting for examples. This will be reviewed in the December slip meeting. Okay. Good. It works much better if I just put these in as we go. Okay, so the last couple of things. The first one is, and I've already told the committee this. My personal life has been getting busier. Well, actually, my business life has been getting busier and busier, and I feel like I'm not able to do the job that I want to do in the slip committee. I will continue to work towards improving the process, but this will be my last slip committee meeting just because the next one I'll be on a plane anyway. So, and by the end of the year, I really need to be clear of some of this. So, just wanted to let you guys know. I desperately hope that things will continue and even improve when I'm not holding things back, which I feel like I have been for a while now. It really is a struggle to just try and get everything done in the time. So just wanted to let you guys know and sort of make it public that this will be the last one. Seth's going to run the Hangout part for the future ones. And like I said, I still intend to do lots of work behind the scenes and try and keep this process, propped up and write blog posts and that sort of thing.
Well, I guess you're too modest, Dick. You were the one moving this thing forward, really.
Well, yeah.
And I really would like to thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
It felt like it was very slow, frustratingly so, and I'm not the only person to have noticed that. Other people did comment that things were moving slowly, and I said, I know, it's tough. I'm hoping that it will at least, taking the split committee part out will actually increase my ability to work on the other parts, the bits behind the scenes that need it. The slip committee part is actually quite a distraction at times. A couple of weeks, a clear part of that. I was supposed to be working on other stuff, and I just kept getting dragged into discussions and things like that. So hopefully that will actually speed things up. Okay, so then the final part is the big items, which I've left to the end because I have a feeling the discussions for these will take some time. I guess the whole thing was kicked off really by the idea of a JSON abstract syntax tree, a generalized JSON abstract syntax tree representation in what we're calling the standard lib. This was the slip issue that generated about 300 comments and became very difficult to follow. Many of the comments were about what should and shouldn't go into a standard library, which is clearly a conversation that needs to be had. So Martin actually has a document on this. So let me bring these up. And Martin, maybe you want to sort of talk about what your document is and what your thoughts are on this.
Is that document public yet?
I put the link on the GitHub channel, and it's public on the web now. Yeah.
I've lost my Scala slip. Sorry. Carry on. I will be with you in a second as soon as I get the right slip thing back again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially what happened is that Eugene met at CMET in Munich on the Google Compiler Summit or something like that, and they sat together and Ed explained to Eugene in detail how the Haskell community works, and that seemed to me that it's a way forward. Because it seems that a lot of our controversies are really about missing a proper definition of what things should be. So if I quickly quickly explain what the Haskell people do, they essentially distinguish between the core, which roughly, they actually say it's only what the compiler needs and not more. One can discuss about it, whether maybe some really core language, let's say what the compiler needs and what's in every language book or what the specification refers to, that would be core, I think, for me. And then there's the other thing, the platform. And the platform is something that is essentially can vary. It's much bigger. I think for Haskell it's actually really big. And the core and the platform are maintained by different sets of people. Essentially the core is maintained by one committee who are essentially the contributors to the core. And I would actually include the people in the compiler because they're sort of the customers of the core to that set of people. And the platform is essentially handled by the people who contribute modules to the platform. And both of these sets have a steering committee who's sort of there mostly to moderate, and then to actually get something included or to make a decision, people can vote, at least for the platform that can. And it seemed that might be a good model for us as well, because that would then mean concretely that the SIP committee or the SLIP committee would do only core and language, and that essentially we leave the platform to the people who do the platform to decide what should be in the platform. and then essentially all we need to do is just essentially jumpstart the process. That means get people to do the platform, and then hand off the decision power and the work of organizing themselves to them. So that was essentially, in short, my proposal. I went and through lots of details what I think this platform would look like and what kind of things could be in the platform. But maybe just to get the rough outline, I should stop now.
Okay. Certainly concentrating on a smaller core, I think, would make life easier in the SLIP committee. So that would definitely be a positive move there. Just and the thing that occurred to me out of this was whether there isn't a scope here that sort of to some degree would please everyone, where there could be potentially, there's the EPFL Scala platform, which is very much like the current one, but there's also a possibility for more functional Scala platforms that would please functional communities, like that. And one suggestion, a very technical one that I wanted to throw out there was borrowing from the kind of Ubuntu and Debian model of Linux, is that there's these kind of umbrella dependencies that you bring in, things like Linux standard base and Ubuntu GUI and Unity and things like that. And these just basically bring in a whole bunch of recommended dependencies underneath them. It's a big download, but it lets you group things, and I wonder some possibility for that to kind of help this process of, well, we're working with the EPFL core or the EPFL platform, and that would bring in kind of the standard set of libraries and distributions there, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So for Haskell, I think there are also several platforms. There's the one that you can download on the site, and then there are platforms like from companies from Well-Typed and FB Complete and things like that. So they have slightly different platforms, and right. I would see that definitely is also a good model to follow in the Scala community.
Yeah. And I think in some ways, certainly my opinion of what, and it's been a bit schizophrenic. I think that's been part of the trouble. One of the things that at least I was trying to get going with the SLIP was a place where library developers could get together and discuss and collaborate on libraries, exactly, whether they were going into a core library or not. And somewhere along the way, it became very focused on what was going into the core library and what wasn't. It seems like there's still room for this kind of clearinghouse of library collaboration out there. Maybe it's not the SLIP, maybe it's a different project that's not so loaded, but this could be a place where the users could know that they're going to get a certain quality of library out of it, and platform creators, platform definers could go to for a pool of resources of good libraries to draw on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the interest of moving this forward, so I read the proposal, and I think it's a good vision, but I just, in the interest of actually having like real dialogue about it, I'll just bring up what I think are maybe some potential questions or roadblocks to it actually being being what Dick says, which is something that can kind of please everyone. So I guess the first thing is that I like the vision a lot because it says that we want core to be small, but I think in practice core is currently very large, and I think that trying to pare it down will be difficult. I mean, the compiler is extensively using a lot of stuff in collections. There's just a lot of, I think there's a lot of things going on, and I think it will be very difficult to migrate. So I think that to the degree the vision is predicated on a small core within a large constellation of platform stuff that can be kind of like there can be multiple versions, whatever else. I think we're a long way from that, which isn't to say we should aim for it, but it's one barrier. Another thing that I think is a little bit difficult is I really like the vision of platform where it says, these are separate libraries. They're sort of, coherent, self-contained. They could be, externally maintained by someone else. It doesn't have to be one team doing the whole thing. But I think that the thing that's hard is the Scala namespace part. In other words, this idea that the platform's going to have some stuff in the Scala namespace and some stuff that's not. Like, I think that's a challenge because I think that I think that part of, to me, the underlying JSON debate, the number one thing that I think was really an issue that people wanted to address is should we create a shared platform library and then make it good, or should we make a good library and then make it a platform library later? I think to me that is the #1 question that was, like a reasonable question where people disagreed but had good points on both sides. And I think that once you say that something's in the Scala namespace, you sort of have decided that you're saying, well, come hell or high water, this is going to be the thing because we've kind of blessed it in a certain way. And so I wonder to what degree, like, we say that there's one platform, but if there's certain things like Akka that are in a different namespace, I do think that those just fundamentally have a different status than something in the Scala namespace that doesn't. And I think it will be hard to change that perception. I think, to me, the #1 question, and I think I understood it from the proposal, but the one I wasn't sure about is, like, I think in Haskell, but certainly like in Python or these other places, the different modules have different maintainers. There isn't like one group that maintains the whole thing. In other words, you've got these different specialists who say, well, I'm going to maintain the OS module, or I'll maintain the sys module, or I'll maintain the data.whatever module in Haskell. And those folks are making the sort of micro decisions about how their library should evolve. But then there may be like a larger platform committee that decides which are in or out, or sort of like figures out when they're going to update versions. Or if there is a conflict between the library author and the committee, they can wrangle that out. I guess my question is, like, do you see that this proposal having that same structure? And if so, how do you imagine delegating out the really large standard library that we have right now? Like, would we have lots of maintainers for that? Would it still be a really small group of core contributors? Because to me, the small group of core contributors is the reason why it seems monolithic. Like, even though you're right, we have these separate modules and they're real, the fact that there's a relatively small group of people who are kind of perceived, at least, as gatekeepers there, I think prevents the kind of federated vision that you're talking about from really seeming like it's going to be like really take off. So just to sort of, you all maybe don't agree, but I just wanted to kind of frame the discussion with some like real points of conflict to see what people think.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of different angles on this one. One of the angles, I think, and it should be considered, is an important part of any library development is to some degree the trust of the user and the ability of the user to find a high quality implementation for something. I've just been through this for a couple of libraries that I've been trying to find recently. And even as much as I know about the Scala space, it's still difficult to come up with a definitive answer sometimes. So, part of the namespace thing is that certain namespaces are inherently more trusted by newcomers in particular, and that is a draw. I mean, something that's in Scala, in the Scala namespace, for example, right now, rightly or wrongly, is considered some sort of graduated level of quality ahead of some random thing that I've put together, org.dwc or something like that. And I would expect that. I wonder if there's not a compromise. CPAN has been rolled out as a model for places where people can go and get libraries.
Yeah, sure. But that's sort of one further step where you say, okay, so essentially there's the Scala namespace, there's the Scala platform, and then there's CPAN or a package or ways where we can discover. So I think the discovery thing is another really important one, but I would not want to dilute the discussion now with that because they're really two different issues. So I would really concentrate on Scala namespace and Scala platform.
Yeah.
So
I was just wondering if there's a place for a Scala name, not a Scala namespace, but a namespace that has the reputation of being high quality libraries that have been documented and tested, and sort of not SLIP because we've decided SLIP is something else. But if there's room for a namespace that's like Scalib or something like that, that is a known place where there's a certain quality to be had.
Yeah. Well, of course we could. People who like, but I think we need to leave that to the community, and for the Scala namespace and Scala platform, well, one answer would be, well, that's a question that the Scala platform team then has to decide to what degree they will actually leverage the Scala namespace and to what degree they want to be split. So, from my point of view, I think the Scala namespace is most useful if you have something which by itself is not very big and is very, very important for essentially common standards and interoperability. So just to give one example, it would be not very good to have to continue with the futures package in Akka and the futures in other modules, and then we have multiple futures in the library. That's sort of the typical point where you say, well, we want a single futures thing, and because futures are probably not that big, then well, just put it in a Scala namespace, because it's really not worthwhile to make this a project in its own, and it is sort of something that should be standard. But I think ultimately it comes down to the platform team to sort of find the boundary. And I know that people have completely different opinions, and that's why I don't think we can set a standard here. As to for the core, it's right. There's a lot of work to be done to actually split it, and my proposal would actually be let's appeal to the community to help, because I don't think that the TypeSafe team can do it all, and that would mean that's maybe something where a lot of people can help to actually do try to modularize the standard library into a smaller core, and I think that would help everyone and would be very worthwhile doing.
I can imagine that splitting the library up is something that was already on our plate for Scala 2.13, not as one of the main goals, but as like a stretch goal. Like we would really like to get to this. So if there are people out there who are like, you know, that sounds like it might take a while and they might not get to it, then you know, yes, we could absolutely use help, because disentangling the compiler from the parts of the standard library that it actually needs, there's some real work to do there, including work on the spec. I mean, there's, you know, one of the main problems is that the spec specifies teeth for, you know, for varargs, and then that's connected to the entire collection framework. But yeah, sorting that out will be work that we could use help with.
Kind of lost you a little bit at the end there, Seth, but I think to summarize, you definitely want to get some volunteer help if you can. And I would say I think this is the sort of thing that also should be tracked through, you know, slip issues. I think people also have a misguided impression that slip is about adding to the Scala libraries, but it's really it should track any change to the core libraries, and that includes removal of things, because this affects people that are using the libraries right. So somebody disagrees, but that's okay. No, but I think volunteers for this and tracking it through the slip site is probably a good idea.
I think there's still, I mean, I think there's a contradiction between saying that platform maintainers should decide about what goes into the Scala namespace and the wish to have several platforms. Because if you really want a platform to be something different, and then you have several groups of people organizing several platforms, then that means every one of these groups of people will decide what to put in their Scala namespace. And that's not the point of a namespace.
Well, I would assume that probably maybe people who aren't like controlling the, you know, actual release process of the Scala platform, maybe it would be awkward if, for example, there was like a strict FP platform and then they decided to put everything in the Scala namespace. I think that probably that wouldn't happen, because they can't release anything, like they can't release packages under scalalang.org and whatnot. So we've already got this convention that stuff released you know, by the organization scalalang.org, you know, that is in the Scala namespace just by convention. It would be weird if other organization owners would start putting stuff in that namespace. I think that as a community process for specifically the Scala platform, like the one that we release on the Scala website, I think that the point was that those people, that those platform people will maybe be the ones in control and voting on what goes into the Scala namespace. But for other platforms, so if there's, like I said, the strict FP platform over there, you know, they can just be they don't have to be community oriented, they can do it however they want. They can, you know, there can be one guy who makes all decisions and releases a platform that he calls, you know, the whatever platform. And I think that we're talking about specifically the stuff that should be the main, like, Scala platform, like a community oriented main Scala platform, and how to organize processes for this platform and not necessarily for all the ones that should maybe potentially exist.
I see the Scala namespace really as just another module in the platform, which exists essentially to be very general and with special focus of interoperability of other modules and essentially having a common base, but it should be handled like any other module really. And yes, it's true that I proposed that for the Scala Lang platform, but I guess if that evolves into something that more people would collaborate on, and that would be great also. I mean, if other platforms want to co-opt the Scala namespace and say, well, we want to have that also, and that should maybe then become a sort of common standard, I would find that very good, but I have the impression that's precisely what at least some of the existing platforms do not want. So that's precisely where they want out, and that should also be okay for them. If they want out, then that's also cool.
I just created an issue for that as well, just to sort of keep a place to track it. So I don't want to derail this question, but there is still the hanging question of what about the JSON AST question, which is it's huge, and I don't know what we do with that big discussion.
Yeah.
I think at this meeting we are. I mean, the first thing we're supposed to do is just decide whether to give this a number and officially encourage it.
I think, yeah, so one of the things I would comment on this is that I believe at least some of the controversy was the fact that this apparently already has a number which it shouldn't have had. The numbers are assigned by the committee as this rolls through the process. So to some degree, I think there was some inflammation caused by this apparently having short-circuited the process or something like that, and already having a number. I'm also wondering, it may have been that this should have been a discussion issue before it was actually a slip proposal even.
Yeah.
But you know, we live and learn on these things. So, but it is not yet slip 27 or whichever slip it proclaims to be, because it hasn't been accepted. It hasn't actually been assigned a number yet. It just has the appearance of that.
That's actually a problem, a general problem for our numbering scheme, right? So if you continue like that, we would probably have only very few slips that are actual slips, and a lot of numbers would sort of be dead end before they reach slip status.
Right. And plus, you know, you end up with, if 3 come in a month, you end up with 3 slip 27s or whatever it is. So, you know, the number should be slip 0000 until it's actually assigned. This one is... I
have one question, Dick, really quickly. Something you said, maybe this just proves how bad a committee member I am, but you said that the process is someone submits the thing and then we decide to give it a number, which means that we are formally supporting it going forward. My sense had been that giving it a number just means that we think there's enough there that there should be a larger conversation. In other words, a slip might eventually not be merged, even if we give it a number. Just that giving it a number makes it formal, saying there seems to be interest about this. We should have a real conversation. We should really look at it. So I just want to be clear that giving something a number doesn't mean that it's definitely going to go in, because I think that would be incorrect.
Oh, that's correct. And beyond that, it's also dependent on there being an implementation that's accepted of sufficient quality and so on and so forth. Nothing's going to get merged until all of those checkboxes have been hit. But this one shouldn't have been number 28 yet. It should have just been entering a discussion phase, at which point probably 28 or 29 or something would be assigned to it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, given the support from at least, from certainly a significant percentage of the people commenting, I think we definitely should go ahead and give it a number, right? I mean, I think probably everyone can agree that whether or not it actually is accepted, it's clearly interesting enough to be given a number. So I think we should. I'm happy to just do that first before we say anything else.
Okay, and then I think it will be 28. In this case, it worked out for M. Dietrich, but we would ask for no numbers to begin with, and then assign a number at that point. But
so just to clarify, so a slip number is not the issue number. They're not necessarily the same.
I think this one he actually says. Oh no, I see. No, that's my bad then. That's just my misunderstanding.
He changed it.
Oh, he did. Okay, I was going to say that's I thought it had a number showing up in there. So this stuff is confusing. I got confused too, but yeah, that's good then. So this is still under review, but you think we should actually assign it a number then?
I mean, I think given how many people talked about it, like I can't imagine not assigning it a number at this point.
Right.
I mean,
it's been the most commented. I
right.
think it's up to 300.
It's the most popular slip ever.
Something's happening, right? Okay, so this will be officially assigned slip 28, but won't yet be accepted as a slip until some kind of conclusion can be reached on where its position is. Very roughly, the best position I've been able to sort of summarize from the code is people think some people think this is a good idea. I would say a slight majority think that this is a worthwhile exercise, but maybe that it shouldn't be in the standard or in the core library. So more of a platform library thing than a core library thing.
Yeah, that sort of was the reason why I brought up that the idea to distinguish the two, because that thing is clearly not core. The compiler doesn't need JSON.
Right. So that's okay. So this is going to be 28 then. I'll make that happen.
We're probably hoping for the Scala namespace in this, I would think.
Well, if it's, I would say if it's what the original proposal, that means the AST that can be consumed by several ones, several JSON parsers, then that would be a candidate for the Scala namespace. If it evolves into essentially, hey, let's bet on the best JSON parser out there, what we think is a really good one, just to have a standard one, then it could. There's no need to be in the Scala namespace. I would then be on the fence about that one.
Right. Yeah, and I do think for the slip that there's sort of like people seem to be in favor of like three different concepts. Like one is something like Python, like a really simple JSON support, just like really simple, easy to use. People can just use it without thinking about it. Some people really spoke in favor of that. Some people really wanted this AST, common AST for interop. I think the Spray people are really interested in that. Play. That I think the original SIP was intended in this respect to be an interop only. And then there's a third group of people who essentially want really high quality JSON parsing in the standard library. In other words, they want to handle all the possible edge cases, ordering versus not, or there's all kinds of features they want. And some people spoke in favor of that. I think we should try and be clear about. I mean, I think maybe the contributor of the SIP was clear what he thought the slip was. But I think we should just be clear about the focus so that people, can be talking about the right thing as opposed to kind of speaking past each other about the different things it could or couldn't do.
Well, I think that's evidence that a proper committee needs to be formed. I know that everything shouldn't necessarily be designed by a huge group of people, but I think that people who are actually arguing strongly for or against something should decide if this effort should be one of those three things. But and then act accordingly and then form a group of people and work on it. But I think that one example, back onto the namespace point, one example of something that it was kind of clear which namespace it should be in, and it should be in the Scala namespace, even though it was a library, is the Futures and Promises thing. It was a group of people in different places that got together and tried to unify and clean something up, right? So the idea was, well, you have, people in different organizations coming together for something that should be simplifying all of the implementations that exist for example, Futures. So in this case, it grew immediately into into the Scala namespace because it was a community project, across many different people. So if there were to be something new, like Martin mentioned, like, well, how do we solve, which JSON problem exactly? Maybe this common format problem. That could maybe grow into the Scala namespace because it's not like we're selecting the fastest JSON parser to adopt into the platform. So I think that this is one way to maybe differentiate what should go into the Scala namespace and what shouldn't. So, for example, if there's a tried and tested thing out there that's awesome and people have been using it for a long time, it doesn't make sense to change namespaces. But if there's a group of people who need to come up with some common, like a solution to some common problem that's faced by lots of different libraries, and lots of people are happy with the outcome, then it would be appropriate to put that into the Scala namespace in some sort of incubating status, or something like that.
Right. Clearly,
I mean, and be in the platform as well, obviously.
I'm just writing these down into a few notes on the end of it. Should it go into the Scala namespace? Is there anything else we want answered here? So the scope is, should it be in the Scala namespace? I think it seems like common or accepted wisdom is that this would not be a core library implementation, but more likely a platform level, platform library level.
One of the reasons it was hard to take up the sort of community's temperature on this is that it often wasn't clear whether people commenting even understood that, you know, that this was not intended for core.
But no, but also there still exists confusion about core and not core. I mean, we are confused about what's core and what's not, because basically the Scala Standard Library is some mixture of core and platform, and we refer to that kind of as core. So
this terminology refers to the hypothetical situation that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, exactly. So I think
it's totally understandable that people would be unclear on that.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, and also, I mean, I do think that putting something in the Scala namespace is blessing it in a certain way, and I think people were, you know, just opposed to the idea that there should be something that is blessed. So I don't think it was just confusion. I think that there's also just a question of, like, I sort of think this is almost like a Plato versus Aristotle kind of thing. Like, should there be an emergent consensus that is then blessed, or should there be something that is blessed first and then people have to, you know, move around it? I mean, I think that there's like a legitimate discussion going on in the issue about how that should happen, basically.
Yeah, certainly some people did understand and were against it anyway, for sure.
It is likely that this expert group may end up answering some of the larger remaining procedural questions about platform libs, name spaces.
Is that wise?
Sorry?
That doesn't seem very wise to me.
No.
You're explicitly mixing up the things.
Okay. Good point. I meant that more as a warning. Here be dragons kind of thing. But yeah, okay. Maybe this is a separate issue then. Maybe that's all part of the.
At this point, I don't think anyone needs a warning, right? I think the dragons have shown themselves, and everyone knows that they're there.
Please read the full thread to familiarize yourself thoroughly with this issue. That seems a fair warning. Okay. If you can make it through to 324 messages and retain some kind of common thread of what's going on, then you're qualified to comment on it at that point. Okay.
The question that Eric raised about the essentially can you agree on something that exists outside the core and that has proven itself, or do you put something in the core and then hope it will be good? Maybe it actually has a technical solution. Somebody mentioned recently to me the idea of package aliases. So if you would have a package, essentially things would be outside the core, but at some point we could say essentially scala.concurrent.futures equals and then some whatever futures library we blessed. So if we
so like Akka future or something like that.
Akka futures, that's right. Yeah, so that we could actually pull in things and solve the naming problem that way.
Interesting. I'll put that on the package. Capture that on the package issue.
Okay.
possible application of Scala of package aliases to try experimental implementations. I think that'll be enough to remind people what that was. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought. Okay, so I think we've used up our time. Does anybody have anything else they want to add, or any other business?
How do we find a new moderator?
I would strongly suggest that the new moderator be somebody much better at project management than I am. I'm very disorganized. I don't know quite how I drifted into doing this, but
you're much too hard on yourself.
No, really. I know good project managers, and I am not one of them. But that, I think, is really what if there was one thing that I would say about the SLIP process and the SLIP committee, is that it's largely procedural what goes on here. It's procedural, and there are opinions offered based on experience, but this is not intended to be a fully dictatorial process. This is more about just keeping things rolling forwards.
Yeah.
And there are better people than me. I'm dead serious. There are much better people qualified than me at doing this. So originally when we set all this up, I had somebody in mind, Aaron Williams, who was involved with early days of JCP before it got too bogged down in the politics. And I think he would have been a very good choice because he's very organized. So somebody like that would be good. But I don't have any actual suggestions, and finding somebody to volunteer could be interesting. So.
Okay, so
it's an ongoing discussion. I'll try and help if I can. And for now, though, I think Seth is organising. I mean, the actual meetings themselves are largely going through the developments of the month, putting an agenda together, and then going through the agenda with screen sharing on, effectively.
Yeah.
And Seth's going to run the Hangout because he did that today. So I need to stop sharing my screen if I can find my thing here. There we go.
So I think we probably should send mail to each other. Think who could be the moderator, if you have any volunteers. This probably wouldn't work so well to do this now in public, because then we would essentially mention people who maybe wouldn't want to do it or things like that. So, but we can do that in with mails among us to figure out who might be that person.
You could also, to share the workload, you could just revolve it through committee members, do a rotation or something.
Yeah, but if something is procedural, then
yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of streamlining to be had if it's the same person all the time.
That's
Otherwise,
true.
everybody will have to learn the ropes.
Okay, well, thanks, guys.
Okay.
All right, see you. Well, I'll see you when I see you. I'll see you online, because I'm not disappearing. I'm just going to work behind the scenes now instead, where I'm more comfortable anyway. So.
Thanks again, Dick.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
See you. Bye.
Bye.